Hello, and welcome to another episode of Linked Insights, where I get to have conversations with some pretty awesome people. Today, of course, is no exception with Dr. Egerton, also known as Dr. E. Hello, and good morning. How are
Good
you?
morning. I'm good. I'm great.
Excellent. Well, I like to start to let people know. So, who are you, and what do you do?
Well, I am a coach, a therapist, and on my website, I'm listed as a matriarch, a mentor, and a mystic. So
Mm,
spend a lot of my time teaching, a master teacher of the Enneagram, which is an ancient personality archetype. And I'm just a person that goes out in the world and tries to make it a kinder and gentler place.
we can always use more of those. I'm a big fan. I always say there's enough negativity in the world. I don't want to add to it. So I try and just
Absolutely.
put positive vibes out there. Um, So what is the main sort of problem that, you help people solve? What is the problem they come to you with that you help them with?
So I work quite a bit in organizations and also with individuals. But the main thing that I do is I help people to find their authentic self. So that sounds a little bit vague, but living in a world where you're constantly being told that you need to create some new version of yourself or the best version of yourself. I say to people all the time, versions get old and you have to keep changing them. So consider going deep enough to find out who you really are, what you really want, how you navigate in the world, as opposed to trying to pick up someone else's version of who they are and put that on, which might fit you like a cheap suit. So it's really and that's kind of on the individual level, but on the organizational level, it's being able to bring your whole full self, your whole soul self to whatever you do so that you can operate at a peak level of passion and purpose and make your contribution.
It's funny so in content marketing, when we're talking about the content people create, we often talk about the need to be authentic. It's more important than anything. Um, but it always reminds me of Oscar Wilde quote, which is "Be yourself. Everyone else is taken."
Everyone else is
And so I think that we're always, finding out who is you is a challenge for some people, and I think it's again, um, once you figure it out, it helps with a lot of different things in terms of the way you find yourself in the world.
well,
Um,
that's the thing. So many people don't know how to do that. And
mhm.
you'll hear the phrase a lot, well, you need to do inner work. Well, people come to me all the time and say, what is inner work? So that's where my teaching of the Enneagram comes in, because it helps to give people sort of a roadmap how to get back home to yourself and stop
Mm,
trying to be a cheap imitation of someone else.
I love that. So you mentioned you work with both organizations and with individuals. Is there sort of an ideal client for you that you look at, whether it's an industry or size or anything like that?
Well, that's very interesting. I started my own company about 30 years ago, and Trinity Transition Consultants. And when I first started out, I would work with organizations to do things like team building, workplace effectiveness, employee engagement, all of that. I still do some of that, but to be honest with you, Jeffrey, in this season of my life, I really do have a preferred client, and it is organizations or individuals who are leading organizations who are brave enough to really recognize the integrity of leading an organization from a place of passion, from a place of connection. I
Mm,
laugh because I used to say they would call me in and say, "Go fix those people. Just go fix them." And when so often it wasn't the people that needed to be fixed, it was really the structure of the organization. So now I look for organizations or individuals that I coach who want to lead in a way where, if they have a strong moral compass, if they have a strong spiritual center, that they're not afraid to bring that into the work in order to sort of guide things in a direction that makes the ultimate end result be a kinder, gentler place to work, a place where people can be authentically who they are, a place where it's not a deal breaker when you make a mistake, when you're trying to innovate. So it's creating more psychological safety inside spaces so that people can actually be who they are, and also to look at the modern world. Post pandemic, a lot of people didn't want to go back to work in the workplace. So now it's really reorganizing things in a strong way where, for instance, my chief of staff is a young woman who has 3 children, one of whom is a 5-month-old baby. And she works from home now. And the other day we had a meeting and the baby started to cry, and I just saw all the color drain out of her face. And we were on, Zoom with a group in an organization. And I just looked at her and I said, "It's just go pick up the baby."
Right.
And, she did. She picked him up, put him on his shoulder, came right back into the meeting, and just, sort of held him, and, he settled down. We kept going. A decade ago, you couldn't have done that. That woman couldn't have had a job. So, just helping to bring work and bring people into the 21st century in a way where it's a better fit,
Yeah, and what I hear from that is making, we always talk about the, work-life balance, and it's just one thing. We have our lives, and sometimes we work, and there's a lot of crossover between that. And I think there's the conventional wisdom is, we want to keep them separate. But I think the real power is when you don't keep them separate, when you get to know the people you work with, when you bring your whole self and all those other things that you have. That's when I think you really have a lot to contribute in the professional space, which a lot of people, I'm the same person. I might not joke around as much, but I still joke around a lot because that's who I am. And so if you want to work with me, that. But a lot of what you're talking about, to me, there's a word that people use, probably overuse, but I talk about it from the brand perspective, which is, building culture, that, and I think that you're saying the way that leaders decide to build their culture and the way that they're going to lead, it translates into everything. And I think it's really understanding everyone's on the same page, or as I like the expression, everyone's on the same hymn sheet. That's when I used to live in England. That's what they used to say. But it's about, having that integrity about what you're doing and having the space to meet people where they are and know that that's part of the culture. And I think it's interesting, a lot of the studies that they do about engagement, unfortunately, we're living in a world with huge, not just non-engaged, but active disengagement.
Yes,
and it's, costing people billions of dollars. And so we talk about taking the time to invest in your company and to do the kinds of work you're talking about so that they can build a culture where people are actively engaged and therefore more productive and happier and all those things. It's a wonder why people don't spend the time to do this.
I so agree with you, and actually it's gotten to the point where people don't even want to hear the words culture change, because it's scary to them, and that's a lot of the work that I do, going in and, sort of looking at that culture and trying to work with it. But, if we're going to be able to evolve. And as a human species, we have to evolve. We have to look at what works and what doesn't work. And we're at a place and a moment in time, where, of course, it's not just the culture of your organization, say in the United States of America. It is the culture of organizations around the world. And so learning how to interact with each other, learning how to make concessions, small things like, sometimes when you have team meetings and we're all on Zoom, we will make the time work for the people that live on this side of the globe. But the people who live, in Australia are having to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, to attend the meeting. So, there are some really powerful things that are missing in terms of, are we really looking at how we balance the need to engage and connect for everyone? Sometimes we have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning just to be able to say, half the teams in Australia, half the teams here, but is it really fair for them to only be the ones that are having to make that accommodation? And sometimes, that's just something that it's not intentional, but it doesn't get looked at, it just doesn't even get looked at. So it's a brave new world, and we have to recognize that and respond appropriately.
Yeah, it's again, and I keep thinking of just the word humanity. Like, why making things more human? And again, when you think about people often say, oh, they highlight the differences when really we're more like than not, and why aren't we focusing on those positive things? You've written a couple books. I just wrote a book. I read lots of books. I'm curious if there's a book or podcast, because I engaged with a lot of podcasts as well. Is there one in particular you think was really worth the time for reading or listening to?
In terms of books, I'm also a voracious reader. And there are a couple of books that are sort of tried and true to me that I give to my clients. One is Integrity by Henry Cloud. I love that book because it gets leaders to look at what does integrity really mean, and what is an organization that has integrity. And I also love an old book. It's called Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute. And I begin with giving my leaders that particular book in order to just sort of highlight, where are we going? What are we really trying to create? And looking at the way that we can deceive ourselves and others by not really being clear about our intentions. And then, of course, I'm partial to my own book, which is
Give it a shout out. Let's go.
The Enneagram Made Easy, because in all of my work, I use the Enneagram to make sure that people understand their own operational system, and that they understand not just what they do, but why they do it. And that's the way I get people to go down into finding their authentic selves and doing the inner work.
I love it. Now, this is a question that I sometimes I keep questioning whether I should include it, but I think it's nice, again, to give a shout out to people. So can you name a LinkedIn connection that you found value from, or you're happy that you're connected to them?
Jeffrey, that's like asking me to name my favorite child.
I can name mine.
Oh my goodness. Oh my.
So I have twin daughters, and when they were babies, my dad would say to me from time to time, I know which one's my favorite. And I'm like, Dad, you can't pick favorites. He said, no, I know. He goes, it's whichever one is not crying. Yeah. So probably the only fair way to have said it.
So yeah, I have, it's more difficult for me, primarily because I am the president of the International Enneagram Association. So I can honestly say that my contacts and my friends are all around the world. So it's almost like my favorite connection or my best connection in every country. Do we go that way?
Well, I wasn't asking for a favorite. I'm just one that you find value from. One of
Okay,
the many.
one of the many. One of the many is Robert Holden. In the UK, Robert has been an amazing ally and advocate. Russ Hudson, who is one of my mentors and close friends, and you find these people on LinkedIn, and then at some point you realize that the relationship becomes so deep and rich that some of the things that you're doing would never have happened without these particular LinkedIn connections. And also, of course, Judge Renee Hughes. I'm just very grateful to have her as a connection.
As am I, as I
Yeah,
share a connection.
that woman could be a connection to anybody, and they're going to find so many more connections in their lives that are meaningful just because of how authentically connected she is to people. So I have to give, I would say, particularly being now here in Philadelphia, um, she's just like my best connection ever.
Oh, yeah. As you know, I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
So I spend most of my time thinking about content.
Yeah.
So as a consumer of content, what's your kind of favorite type of content that you get from brands in the world?
Um, once again, because I'm a voracious reader,
Mhm.
I I want to be sure I understand the question, so I'll tell you what I'm thinking, and you tell me if I'm on the right.
Sure.
I
However you interpret it.
yeah, I really do. I like a well thought out published article,
Mhm.
particularly as it pertains to all things psychology, how the brain works,
Mm.
how we work as individuals. So I'm still in the place where I prefer reading content,
Mm.
um, and but I do like social media videos. I like to see creative ways that people put things out into the world that catch my attention and hold my attention.
Mm.
So
That's what it's all about. That's the key.
yeah, it's got to catch my attention, and because I'm a reader, when something is in video form or if it's a podcast, it's got to be really good because
Mhm.
it's got to lead with
Gotta have
something.
hook, right?
Uh,
And then
I
keep you.
if it doesn't have that, it's not going to keep me. I'm just going to go back to reading something.
Yeah, and it's a challenge for a lot of people. Attention is the most valuable commodity you can have because if you don't have that, then you can't share the wisdom and insights of everything you want to share.
Exactly.
So, as someone who we all I think need to what I call feed the beast, the content beast. So, what do you find is your biggest challenge in sort of creating that consistent and valuable content to share with the people that matter, your audience?
Yeah. The challenge for me is that the thing that I do best is I'm a relational person. And
Mhm.
so I have to be able to translate out my relational skills to people in a way where if they're not interacting with me live
Mhm.
one on one, they can still stay engaged and fascinated by what I do. What I teach, that being the Enneagram, 9 different personality archetypes, once people engage with that and they begin to see themselves, then
Mhm.
it's like that's the hook. I've got them, and I've got them for life. But the challenge is finding different ways to really get that hook out there. I'm not a self-aggrandizing person, so I
Mhm.
don't like trying to kind of sell myself. It's what I do that I want people to attach to and then want more. So the challenge obviously is, how do I do that? I'm able to do it in written form. I'm able to do it with books. People like my books. And I'm able to do it on Zoom when we come together and I have a screen. But, I can't just sit in front of a camera and wax philosophical about stuff. I need a human on the other side of the camera that I'm talking.
This is great. Yeah.
This works.
I think there's definitely, it's different. It's definitely different to just talk, for sure.
Yeah.
You were talking earlier about like everyone coming into the 21st century from kind of the humanistic perspective of like, we need to now understand that the whole self of people. Now, I'm also fascinated and becoming slightly obsessed with the world of AI. So in terms of AI and your thoughts on it, if you use it, is it, where do you stand on your beliefs of, is it good, bad, who knows yet? What are your thoughts on AI?
Well, I as in all things in moderation, can be useful. Some things I find AI to be useful sometimes when I'm creating content and I'm looking for a way to say something. I know what I want to say, but it sounds clunky. And so I can put it in AI and it'll smooth it out for me, and I find that to be helpful. And sometimes just brainstorming with AI is fun. I like doing that. For instance, I'm launching a new podcast, and
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I had a real brainstorming session with AI just in coming up with the name, and then immediately didn't like any of them. and, and went right back to
try harder, AI. Try harder.
You're not giving me anything better than what I already have. So thanks for your time, but go home.
Hey, that happens with humans too, by the way. Let's just be honest.
You're absolutely right, because I did sit down and brainstorm with a team of folks as well. But I also teach something called the Humanity Mosaic, and I thought, why would I not just use that?
I
That
love the sound
is,
of that, by the way.
yeah, it's fascinating, and people don't necessarily know what that means, but I think that's good. That's what makes you want to.
You're like, wait, tell me more.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think AI has its place. It's come along, I think, at a very good time. And at the same time, you need to not necessarily trust so much, but you need to do a lot of verifying, because personally, I think it makes some stuff up.
Oh no, it definitely does. Hallucinations are real.
Yeah.
And one of the things I say in my work is, be like a spy, trust no one.
No.
And then I'm like, but don't be a spy, don't deceive people, and don't try and don't kill anyone. So those are my, you have to be
Right.
both sides of the, but yeah, you to verify is a huge part of what you need to do.
Right.
All right, my last question is unrelated to any of this. It's just because I think it's an interesting question and tells a lot about a person. So I produce animation as part of what I do. And so there's a pantheon of animated characters from a long time. Can you name one of your favorites? So you don't have to be your favorite, because I think that's, again, like your favorite child. But if you can name one of your favorite characters.
Can I have two?
You may have two.
I actually grew up loving the character of Cinderella. There
Love
was
it.
just something
Classic.
about Cinderella that, and of
Pure
course,
and innocent.
yes, just
and kind.
A kind and good person who it turned out for her well in the end. And then I'd say fast forward, looking at more modern day animations. I like Ariel, the Little Mermaid. Yeah.
Two great classics. from the Disney. Yeah, it's hard. You know, they're just something about those characters that if you look at sort of the way, because in some ways both of them, you know, have some of the classic kind of female, and then they also have modern, you know, empowerment. Even Cinderella, like in terms of, you know, and so I always think there's a lot more to them than meets the eye. You know, a lot of these characters, and so.
And another thing that I like about those characters is that over time, we have seen, you know, we've seen the animation spin off into real life productions. And with Cinderella and with Ariel, you know, it's been a very good feeling for me to see that they evolved to even represent brown girls, you know, brown and Black people. And so I think that's important when you can, when particularly if you're growing up and you're looking at animation, and if you don't get to see yourself, you know, that's people don't understand what it feels like not to be able to ever see yourself in a character in that way. You know, I thought when Mulan came out, that was beautiful as well. So I like the diversity in animation and being able to see a range of humanity in, you know, baked into the end products.
Right. You know, my feeling about whether it's movies or animation or whatever it may be is like we have a diverse population of citizenships. Why shouldn't they be represented in art, like in all different forms? So it makes the world more interesting. You know, but I also, to be able to relate is something that's, you know, super important, I think, in work that you do. Dr. E, this has been awesome. I really appreciate your time and sharing with us your story of what you do and how you help. And I say thank you and keep at it. You're doing great work.
Thanks so much. Great talking to you, Jeffrey.
Thank you. Take care.